America is home to 33 million small businesses, the beating heart of communities across the country.
And proof that the American dream is still alive.
This is a show about those dreamers and doers and the communities they serve.
Their real life stories.
Their struggles and successes.
Their grit, determination, and passion.
And the people who fight
to keep their American dream alive.
I'm Alfredo Ortiz.
I'm Elaine Parker.
And it's time for another episode of Main Street Matters,
America's small business megaphone. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Main Street Matters, America's small business megaphone. I'm Elaine Parker, the president of the Job Creators Network Foundation, and today we're joined by Sandy Moore. Sandy is the CEO of the Pet Advocacy Network. Sandy, welcome to Main Street Matters.
Thank you, Elaine. Great to see you this morning, and thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. I mean, everybody loves pets, right?
Yes.
I think that a lot of people don't realize that how big the industry is and
That's right.
The impact it has on our economy, that these are small business owners on top of that. Tell us what the Pet Advocacy Network does.
So the Pet Advocacy Network was formed in 1971 to defend our right to own, to import, to breed, and to sell live pets. It was started around our difficulty importing birds into the U.S. And from then we've grown into, we deal with from local, state, and federal issues that affect the supply of live pets.
Okay. So exotic pets,
Right. So birds, small animals, fish, reptiles, dogs, and cats. Outside of that, really not too much. Like we don't deal in like farm animal issues, and I know that there are some bleed over like horses or chickens. I think our chickens are quite popular right now, but we don't delve into that.
Pigs. I remember there was a time when pigs were very popular to have as a pet.
Exactly. Also farm animal.
Well, we talk a little bit about, I mentioned that your constituency, your members are small business owners. From your perspective, how has government overreach grown into one of the biggest threats facing small businesses in the pet care industry?
Well, I can think of a couple different areas. So a number of them right now, actually. The tariffs are affecting the importation of live animals. Typically, live pets, especially live reptiles and live fish, have not been part of the tariff agreements until now, and all of a sudden we're getting tariffs on those animals. The Endangered Species Act is also affecting our ability to import animals that are being traded around the rest of the world. So the Endangered Species Act was signed into law in 1973 by President Nixon. And it was the first of its kind, really, in that kind of conservation of species. And it was tremendous forethought. Nobody thought at that point about having those animals that were listed as being farm raised. And so there's no carve out for any of those animals to be traded under the Endangered Species Act. Since then, of course, around the world, people farm different animals like Asian arowanas are farmed. They're critically endangered in their natural habitat in Indonesia, but are farm raised all throughout Southeast Asia and traded around the world under the CITES Convention. And CITES stands for the Convention for the International Trade of Endangered Species. It's a convention that all of the trading countries sign an agreement that they take stock of what their native animals that are endangered, and they believe in sustainable trade. So if they may not allow for taking of the wild counterparts, but they do allow for trade in tank raised or farm raised animals. And so those animals, specifically those Asian arowanas, are microchipped to prove that they are not taken from the wild and traded around the world. So the U.S. is not allowed to do that, and we actually cost us millions of dollars in lost sales opportunities.
So, probably a dumb question. What is an Asian arowana?
It's a lucky fish, is what it is. It's a bony tonguefish. If you're from Florida, so you know what a tarpon looks like.
Mhm.
So it's kind of a miniature tarpon. That's the best way that I can describe it. It's got big scales like that. It's got a big mouth. It's a predatory ambush predatory fish, and it's a beautiful fish that gets to be about 30 inches long, and it's considered good luck by some Asian countries.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And
Uh,
then lastly, what we're seeing is overreach in actually our elected officials deciding winners and losers in the marketplace by saying that animals that come from a pet store are not it's not the humane sales model, that you should only buy your animals from shelters and rescues because that's humane. So they're picking winners and losers in the marketplace, although the sourcing may actually be supporting the very kind of substandard breeders that we all want out of business. So we believe in government oversight of breeders, and we believe in consumer protection for people buying those animals.
so let's talk about in terms of how big the pet industry is, because I
Yes,
think people don't realize what an impact.
it's
Um,
extraordinary, isn't it?
Huge,
It
huge.
is. It
Talk
is.
to us about
So,
the impact there.
so we the latest numbers that I have seen are this year is expected to be a $168 billion industry.
Wow. I mean,
Yeah,
because that includes people selling pets, obviously, pet
right,
stores, but then
right.
there's the pet supplies, there's the
That's
pet
right.
food, there's the pet toys, there's the pet clothes, there's the
And services, lots
groomers.
of services, grooming, boarding, all of that.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty incredible.
Right.
Veterinarian services are
Yes.
is that in the mix for you too?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, this is a massive industry to look at in terms of economic. So you talk about veterinarians, groomers, pet stores; those are all small business owners.
They sure are.
What are some of the most impactful regulations that you've seen hurt some of those industries, whether it be boarders or groomers? What are you seeing there?
Well, I think, I'm dealing with predominantly live animal issues. So right now, everybody's looking at the tariffs. Other than that, we've seen a huge increase recently in USDA inspection fees for importation of certain animals. Before that, it's U.S. Fish and Wildlife. We don't have any control over what times the airlines from Asia or from Europe or from Africa hit the United States, but mostly they don't land from 9 to 5. So we pay overtime to U.S. Fish and Wildlife at a really exorbitant rate. There are any number of inspections that a live animal importer or breeder or distributor have to go through on a regular basis. A lot of licensing, and I think that there should be. I am not disagreeing with the need for oversight. I think we all care about these animals and want them to have the best care possible, but there is a lot of cost that goes into that care. So
How does some of these regulations as overreach, how does it impact customer choice, for the public at large?
Well, I think this really is maybe a more state to state question, but one specific example that we continue to face this issue is on what we call white lists, which is a list of allowable species only, versus black list is the list of animals that that the state knows that you shouldn't have. So here in Florida, for example, I've been on the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission TAG, the technical advisory group, for the past 3.5 years, and that's how that tag started. Is going from, we have a number of species that we know we shouldn't have in Florida: piranhas, freshwater stingrays, other animals like that. There's clearly, right, we know that there's a potential for them to become invasive. We know we should just not possess those in Florida. Me as a private owner, me as a wholesaler, just shouldn't have that in the state. Versus having a list of animals that we can own, and that's problematic in that, first of all, there are new species being discovered all the time in freshwater fish. The company that I ran had a stock list. Over time, it was 19,000 different species of fish. So asking an inspector to know all of those species is just a practical impossibility. And then, because we're in an age of splitters, right? The taxonomic changes from what is legal today may change till tomorrow because it's just been redescribed. So we actually have that issue in Maine. Maine developed a whitelist 35 years ago. And unfortunately, that list has never been updated to add new species or to change the taxonomic descriptions since that point. So what they can't have access to is in excess of 50% of the animals the rest of the country has access to. And so, and what that causes is people that live in Maine then drive across the border into another state and go get the animals they want and bring them back into the state. So it creates actually a black market for fish or other animals.
Interesting. So you mentioned state-based laws. So are you dealing with kind of the federal government, but then 50 states worth of laws
Yes.
that you're trying to keep up with, impact, and advocate for? Wow. Do you have chapters around the country?
No, we're based in Washington, D.C., but the pet industry is, we're very fortunate in the U.S. that this is a pet loving country. I think over 50% of homes have dogs, and a little bit less than that, cats. We love our animals. So we have members around the country, and we have visibility into all of those states.
Wow. I mean, that's incredibly hard because I know I mentioned to you before we came on air, Camp Bow Wow, the founder of Camp Bow Wow, Heidi Ganal, has been a member of Job Creators Network for well over 10 years. And she's, Camp Bow Wow is a well-known doggy daycare. She's got a fantastic life story. But she would talk to us about some of the regulations that, say, in New Jersey versus Arizona versus, because she franchised the Camp Bow Wow all across the country. And she was talking about and I think it was New Jersey, which this regulation kind of sounds like a New Jersey regulation, but it was having the proper ratio of employee to dogs, which it was a very high ratio as far as how many people per dog had to be there per group of dogs. But obviously the cost there, I mean, people don't realize, they think, it caused you to have to hire more people simply to be present for the dogs. And while I love dogs too, it's not like my kindergartners who, you have to have a proper ratio of teachers to students. You can't have 75 students to one teacher. And that's really how they were addressing it. And it was making it very difficult for the Camp Bow Wows in that state to operate because your labor costs went up.
That's exactly right. And I think that may be the point on some of the activists. It doesn't seem to be in your face like that. But the point is to make the cost of animal ownership so prohibitive that we will stop owning animals. So, for example, non-economic damages. right? The change from the drive to have change pets from being our property to personhood. The consequence of that change, and that actually last month in New York City, a dog that was unfortunately was run over and killed. The judge declared that that dog was an immediate family member. And so what that does from a liability standpoint, the liability goes from thousands of dollars to $1 million. From a criminal standpoint, it goes from an assault to a manslaughter. It, from, and that cost of liability affects everything about the dog. It affects the cost of the dog food, right? If there's a chance that you accident, that there's a contaminant and you kill a dog, the liability from that, or it chokes on a chew toy or something like that, it would price us out of the ability to own animals.
Yeah, I didn't think about the litigation aspects in that industry. What kinds of, we've seen some new legislation actually recently here in Florida that Governor DeSantis passed on the cruelty side. And I don't know if you saw it went viral. There was that dog that was left on the side of the road during the hurricane. What are you seeing in terms of litigation, say in Florida or other states that is kind of on the scary side when you talk about personhood? I haven't heard any of that.
Yeah, so I think it's funny, not funny, haha, but there are over 100 schools that teach environmental law, and we're seeing actually movements toward that. Bills being proposed in most states that would change their status from property to personhood. So far, it's not been successful, right? The pet industry has been successful in shutting it down. The veterinary community has been successful in shutting it down. But every time we add more layers of cost, it makes pet ownership prohibitive, or animal ownership prohibitive.
Wow. There's a lot of aspects to this that I hadn't thought of outside of just the small business and the regulatory. When you bring in the legal aspects, regulatory, legal, it's the cost can really drive up just the cost of running your business, like any other small business, right?
Right.
Yeah. I would imagine that the veterinarian your veterinarian constituency is a pretty powerful constituency in terms of share of voice. Tell us a little bit about some of the challenges in the veterinarian industry.
I would really have to defer to the AVMA, and they're a really terrific organization, but they have a number of challenges in front of them also. I actually am looking through, we have a DC fly-in for our membership coming up in just a couple, 3 weeks, bringing in members to walk the Hall of Congress with us and meet their lawmakers. And I think there are a couple items on here specific to veterinary care. So let's see. We have Senate Bill 620, the Veterinary Services to Improve Public Health in Rural Communities Act, to enhance veterinary service for Indian tribes and tribal organizations because they are underserved. We try really hard not to have too much overlap, to let them do their stuff, and so we're not actually stepping on their toes. Another thing here, I think this one is really important. So House Bill 2253 by Fitzpatrick in Pennsylvania, the Puppy Protection Act of 2025, is the standards and certification process for humane handling, care, treatment, and transportation of animals of the Animal Welfare Act to further provide for the humane treatment of dogs by dog dealers. And that one we're opposing because it also adds more oversight by people, by not necessarily our government folks, but by activists.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are some of the most heavy regulated states that you kind of find yourself focused on and putting more resources into? Is there one that wins the prize?
This year, California. I mean, you can always check that one. California, New York, and we're fighting actually in New York. They just tried to ban the sale of pet birds, and they also have that in New York City, right as in this very moment. Massachusetts has the same thing. Rhode Island had the same thing. Texas, there are last year there were or last session, excuse me, there were proposed dog and cat sale bans in Texas, Delaware, Nevada, Minnesota.
What is the thought behind trying to ban the sale of birds, parrots and, I'm not a bird person, so I don't know.
Right.
I don't know all the but cats and dogs. I
Yeah.
mean, that's kind of like you said,
Cats
more
and
than
dogs.
50% of households have dogs.
That's right. Right. So the thought is if you don't sell them at pet stores, then people will go to their local animal shelter and adopt the dogs and cats of their choice. But it's cats, dogs, rabbits, guinea pigs, birds, and even last week in New Palestine, Indiana, all animals.
Wow.
Ban the sale of all animals. So that's the thought, is changing the sourcing model.
Okay.
But what we've seen with like California's passed such a ban, they did 5 years ago. What the effect of it is that the puppy scams, where people are buying the animals that they want because they're not available at the local shelters, went up 300%.
I have seen and heard that the cost of buying from a breeder or,
Right.
any is very expensive now.
Yeah. Yeah. So people are it's unfortunate because it shut down the only safe way to buy those animals. And I've been out on breeder tours, two of them throughout the Midwest over the past month, and the level of care and socialization and veterinary care that these animals get in these volume breeding facilities is something I've never seen before. It's really, next time I want to come back as one of these puppies. The level of care is just beautiful, and it would be like that's where you'd want your animal to come from.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Well, Sandy, thank you so much for joining us. Where can people
you.
go to find out more about what you're doing and support what you're doing?
I would love it. So I run the Pet Advocacy Network. It's petadvocacy.org. And you can reach me by email at sandy@petadvocacy.org. And I look forward to meeting everybody.
Well, great. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us on Main Street
pleasure.
Matters. And thank you all for taking the time to join in. Main Street Matters is part of the Salem Podcast Network. New episodes debut every Wednesday and Friday. You can subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast from, and we'll be back soon with another episode. Bye for now.